This is a podcast about our lived experience, which unfortunately includes infant death and subsequent mental health struggles. Please take good care of yourself and only listen if this content feels safe for you right now. We'll still be here when you're ready.
The death of my son, moving 3 times in 6 months, my parents' divorce, my husband's job loss.
I was, 12 weeks postpartum. My then husband came out to me as transgender. And just a couple weeks later, our son suddenly died.
I don't think you're in my diary at all, actually. I'll be totally honest with you.
I literally feel like a speck of dirt in your grief life. I am nothing.
Okay. So listeners, hi. This is Judith and Alina from As Long As I'm Living podcast. Judith is arranging herself on her bed.
This is how professional I am.
So today's episode is going to be my reflections on 1 year of grief. I kind of want to talk about some of the high and low points of the year, and Judith, will hop in here and there because we've obviously both been experiencing it. All I'm hearing are your blankets rustling.
Sorry. It's like having a really intense, serious moment, and I'm just like she's dripping over my face, and it's just okay. I don't know.
So in honor and recognition of the anniversary of my son Quinn's death on the 18th, I'm gonna do some reflections on what 1 year of grief has looked like for me. And Judith, I'm hoping you're gonna hop in as well. But I went through all my grief journals. I went through all the messages I've sent, not all, but some of the messages I've sent to people. So I have kind of a timeline of grief that I experienced. And, for anybody who's new here or didn't listen to the intro, I not only had the death of my son this year, but also the end of a marriage. So those two things are intertwined for sure. So without further ado, while Judith rearranges herself again into a fourth location. So, Judith, any thoughts on what I just said before we start? Do you have any thoughts on the format?
How long did you write in your grief journal?
So I kept a grief journal that I would say I wrote in it regularly for maybe 2 or 3 months. And then since then, I've probably only written in it maybe 10 times since then. But I do feel like I have a place to dump things if I want to.
I was curious because when I read option B by Sheryl Sandberg, she said she kept a grief journal for 4 months and she wrote in it every day. And I remember at the time, it was right after Aiden died, and I remember thinking, that's it? Only 4 months? You only kept it for 4 months? It's weird. I only wrote mine for 4 months, and after 4 months, I stopped needing it. And I wrote in it every so often, but in general, I wrote in it very consistently for 4 months, and then I didn't need it as much. So I think that's an interesting thing just to note.
Yeah, I'm looking at mine right now, and the last time that I regularly wrote in it was at 4 months.
Isn't that weird?
Wow.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either. Yeah, so there's little chunks here and there, one thing in August, 2 things in October, but after mid-May, I kind of stopped writing in it. That's kind of crazy. Interesting.
Where is Megan Devine when we need her? Please explain to us what this phenomenon is.
All right, so Quinn died on January 18th of last year. The first kind of milestone was drying up my breast milk, which happened rather quickly. They put me on medication that was really tragically sad. And I just remember feeling like pumping milk was hell. That felt like straight up hell, pumping milk for a dead baby. And I would say at this time, in the first couple days and first week or so, I feel like if I was awake, I was either in absolutely excruciating pain, as though I was literally dying, or I felt nothing, like I was a black hole. Not that I felt neutral, I felt nothing. Do you know what I mean? Completely dissociated. So I think in those first early days and weeks, it was a ratio of maybe 75% pain to 25% dissociated. Would you agree?
I'm trying to remember what those first few days were like...
Like, I can even tell you, like, I worked on his memorial video and finished it when he had died 10 days before. Like, so for a week and a half, I was working a lot of minutes on a memorial video, watching videos of him and putting them together to music, which is like, it's honestly hard for me to watch even now. And I did it when he had just died, I think, because I was like kind of separated from it at that point. And those first like week or two, like, I think I was definitely feeling excruciating pain, but I do also think there was a part of me that was separating myself from it for the first couple weeks. And I kind of remember that crashing down at like 3 or 4 weeks, where all of a sudden it was like I felt less nothing, but started feeling more pain. Like there wasn't anything good coming yet. It was just like more and more and more pain and less and less nothing.
I think my timeline was a little different. I first of all, I have to say I just really don't remember that much from that time.
Well, that too.
I really don't remember very much. It's kind of groggy in my head, but I know that I was in a lot of pain pretty much immediately. Like after I got to after the police left and everything, this shock just kind of sort of wore off, and I think I was very disassociated. I think that's a really good way to put it. Like I think the way my friends have described it to me now is that I was there, but I wasn't there at all. Like there was nothing in my eyes. You could look at my eyes and I was gone. There was no person there to look at.
Yep.
And I know that my phone didn't stop ringing for a week, probably more, 10 days. My phone did not stop ringing. And I answered all of those calls.
You're nuts.
I don't know why. I just answered. I think I answered a lot of calls. But I remember also I spoke to immediately, within a few hours, I spoke to 3 lost parents. And that was really helpful. Mm-hmm. I must have sounded, you know what, we'll invite one of them on to the podcast because I'm really close with her still. She told me that I made no sense. She's like, it made no sense for days. But she's like, you would sit on the phone with me for hours, making no sense, falling asleep, like really, like I probably sounded completely drunk. Yeah. But I also was like in a lot of pain. I don't think that I was numb. I was in a lot of pain. And then once, to me, like the big turning point was when he was buried because of COVID. There was a delay. There was days 1 through 5, which at that point, like I didn't eat. Like I basically was dead myself. I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah. I didn't eat. The only way I could sleep is if I was on Xanax. Mm-hmm. I would wake up at 3 a.m. and I'd crawl into my parents' bed, sobbing, screaming, sobbing. There was that. And then after he was buried, I ate for the first time. And I don't want to say it was better because I was still like out of my mind. But I do think that after 5 days, I was at least... I don't know how else to put it. I wasn't dead. I was like in a comatose state. How about that?
Yeah. Chart trending upward.
Yeah. Yes. My friend Miriam, who I talk about a lot in this podcast, apparently, she flew in, I don't remember when. Friday. She was there Friday morning. He died Thursday. She was there Friday morning. And on Saturday night, I saw her. And I said to her, I was like, Miriam, I think I'm like dead myself. Like I think I'm gone. I don't think I'm a person anymore. And she's like, no, Judith, like I see you. And I have to say, like even now I'm like emotional thinking about it because I was pretty convinced at that point that this was going to be my life for the rest of my life, that I wasn't going to be a person anymore, that I wasn't going to have a sense of humor, that I was never going to feel joy again, that I was just never going to be me ever again. And Miriam looked at me, she's like, I see it. I swear there's like a spark in there. Like you are not dead.
It's weird because that time, that really early time, and we're talking now about like the first couple of weeks Judith and I are talking about, that time is so strange because it both felt like an eternity. Like it felt like interminable. Like this is my life now. Like I get up in the morning and I cry in his room. And then I go downstairs and I cry on the sofa. And then I go up and I cry in my bed. And then I take a shower and cry in the shower. And then I go back to his room and cry on the floor in his room. My day was so filled with taking care of him that the days without him felt so long. like there was just all this time to fill, and I filled it by crying for like no question. Crying and zoning out, doing nothing, staring into space, like dissociating.
There was, yes, I agree. There was a time where I thought I would wake up every 3 to 4 hours forever.
Yep.
I was like, oh, I woke up at 12:30 and then I woke up at 3:30 because that's when he ate. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, for the rest of my life, I'm just going to wake up. And first of all, I don't sleep well, so I mean, that is true. Mm-hmm. But I really genuinely thought to myself that for the rest of my life, I am going to look at the clock at 7:30 and be like, oh, I have to feed Aiden. And I just want to reassure people that that doesn't happen quite that way.
You and I do still, if we're up in the middle of the night, we do still call it 8 an hour. Quinn slept through the night, which I'm grateful for, but so I don't have that with him. But if I'm up at 3:30, I'll text Judith and I'll say, I'm up at 8 an hour.
It's 8 an hour. That's true. When like around 4:30 when the light, or 5 when like the light starts to peer in a little bit, that's like 8 an hours. But aside from that, like at 3:30 in the afternoon, I do not think I have to go make a bottle.
Yeah.
And like I'm so grateful for that. And I don't know at what point that happened.
And you know what? Another thing I'll say is in the beginning, like all of those really painful things that felt so ridiculous to be holding on to, like the feeling like I had to go wake him up from a nap or something. Like I didn't want that to go away because that at the time felt like that was my connection to him. And if that went away, then I would have no connection to him. And I will also say like that was truly something I was very afraid of, was when I was not quite so debilitatingly sad all the time. And when I had new routines, once I had new routines without him in them, how was that going to feel? Like I lost a piece of him, and I don't feel that way, so if anybody's in the earlier stage of this and they're worried about letting go of some of the pain because that's a connection to them, like I would say, like, I don't really feel that way anymore a year out. Like I'm glad the pain is gone. I don't need the pain to have the connection to him.
I agree. Okay, so tell me what else is on your list.
Okay, so I also specifically noted that, so on February 10th in my grief journal, I wrote, I no longer want to be dead. So he died on the 18th of January. So that means for almost a full month, I wanted to be dead all the time. I also felt like I was dead, as Judith mentioned. Like I felt like I was, dead. And also I wanted to be dead. But so February 10th, I no longer wanted to be dead, which I thought was an interesting thing to note. The very first time that I felt normal for just an hour or two, I remember it was March 8th. And I went to, the reason I know it's March 8th is because I have a 1 second of this. It was March 8th and I went to Target and I got a coffee from Starbucks. And because of COVID, I had to go drink the coffee in my car. But then I walked around Target and I just, for like 1 hour, like the sun was shining and I just like felt like normal. And then it all came crashing down and I felt sad again. But I had one teeny, tiny little new normal feeling, March 8th. So that was less than 2 months out. Do you remember when you first felt normal?
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember the first time I felt normal, but I remember the first time I felt happy.
Oh, tell us that.
So Aiden died March 4th, and in May we went on a vacation, and I learned how to surf. But I didn't learn how to surf. I took a surfing lesson. If you put me on a surfboard now, I wouldn't know how to do it. So I don't think that's fair to say. But I was surfing, and I remember like I had ridden the wave. Surfed the wave, I don't know, and I just was smiling, like I was so happy. It was so fun, like it was so fun. Mm-hmm. And I was just lying on the surfboard in the middle of the ocean, and I was laughing, and I was like having a really good time. Me and this guy who looked like the guy from Moana, and he was so nice. I'm like, and I was just having I remember that being like in my mind, I can replay it, and that was like the first time I was happy. I was like, this is fun.
Yeah.
I want to like live because I want to have moments like this.
Yes.
At first, that was like the first time I was like, I want to live because then I get to do this. And then I kind of went from that stage to like having more singular moments like that where I'd be like, okay, like I'm so glad I lived 2 more months because then I had this happy memory. And then I was like, I'm so glad I lived 1 more month because I had this happy memory and I wouldn't have wanted to miss this. Yeah. That's how it went in my brain. Like I was like, I wouldn't want to miss this. This is so joyous. Like I don't want to miss meeting you in person. And remember when we were dancing, that was one of them for me when we were dancing at the cabin. It was like, Well, I'm so glad I didn't die because this is so much fun. I want to dance around a cabin.
We had so much fun.
So much fun.
Do you remember when we were on that tube? So we had this flotation, this like floaty that we wanted to go out and like float in the lake, but we didn't want to float away. So we like tied it with this really long, dirty rope to the dock. But the current of the lake was just strong enough that it was just like, it just kept dragging us into the bank.
And Alina was like being a problem solver, and she's like,
I was like, but the current, if we tie the rope over here, then the current will take us.
The is going 6 miles an hour. We can calculate that if we start at this point, we will land at that point in 42 minutes.
So I was like, okay, so we have to swim in this direction against the current. Paddle, 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 paddle. And of course, I should also mention, we were high at the time of this.
And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, she is really intense about this floating thing. If she really wants to, I'll swim in that direction. And at one point, you're like, Judy, they're not swimming hard enough.
This is when I forgot sunscreen on this trip, and I was like getting sunburned. And Judith was like, oh, well, why don't you go ask those people next door? You can borrow their sunscreen, because they had sunscreen in their hands and we could see it. And I was like, go over and talk to them and ask for sunscreen? Like, I'm such an introvert. It straight up did not occur to me that was even an option. Like, I think you at first pointed out, you were like, look at them, they have sunscreen. And I was like, yeah, they do.
And you were like, I'm not going to go ask them for sunscreen. It's like, well, you're going to get burned.
So Judith did go and ask for sunscreen.
I did. And you know what? They were so happy to give us the sunscreen.
They were.
And I asked Alina, I said, Alina, if some stranger came over to you and asked to borrow your sunscreen, would you be happy to give it to them? And she's like, I would give them the whole bottle. I would never ask for it back. They could have the whole bottle of sunscreen. I was like, so why do you assume that these random strangers don't want to help us out? And they were so happy to help us out. So that was a lesson for Alina. Anyway, I'm glad I lived for that moment.
Yes. A couple of just like milestones. The first time I told someone he died without crying was about 2 months out. The first day I didn't cry at all was at the end of March, so about 2 months out. So every day before that I had cried at least somewhat. And then, of course, the days following it, I did cry every day. But now I have far more days where I don't cry than that I do cry. I was able to go through all of his things and pack them up to give some away at about 3 months out from the loss. So that was in mid-April. And then the other like quick milestone I'll say about April was when Kaylee and I went on we ate out for the first time at a restaurant. And this was also, of course, COVID. Like, we hadn't been really eating out at all anyway. And then, of course, our son died. And we went on our first restaurant meal out with my family. And it was such a disaster. We felt like two raw, like, exposed nerves. And my family, I could tell, like, wanted it to be a pleasant experience for us. But they were also stressed out of their minds. And it was not good. It was not a good meal. Okay, so then now, unfortunately, I do have to note that in April so this was 3 months out from the loss, when my anxiety like really ramped up, like really, really bad. I think I was like kind of numb before and mainly feeling sadness. And then at about 3 months out, I started feeling some other grief symptoms. The brain fog, I feel like, really set in like June. So that was June and July, when I was like 6 months out. That was when the confusion really kicked in. Do you feel like you were confused early? Because I feel like I was pretty with it, and then all of a sudden my confusion was like,
no,
really
I was
bad.
confused early. I remember I went to this bookstore to get a book, which was so stupid, as if I was going to read a book. And I probably spent like 5 hours just wandering the aisles, so confused. I'd look at book titles and I couldn't read them. Like, I was so confused, and there were so many books. And then I remember one day I went shopping and I couldn't pick a color. Like, everything looked muted. The only way to describe it is if you are colorblind and everything looks gray and all food tastes the exact same. Yes. And I remember I got my nails done one day and every nail polish color looked the exact same. It's like you can't make decisions because you're overwhelmed with the lack of differentiation. Like, I couldn't tell you which one I wanted. I couldn't tell you what I want to eat.
Yeah, like food menus are like so challenging. It's like, I don't know. Do I like pasta? I don't remember.
That's what it was like. Do I like pasta? Do I like the color blue? I don't know. I don't like anything right now. I went shopping with my mom for my brother's wedding, and I remember we were in Loft or something, and I would like put on clothes, And I'd look at her and my mom would be like, well, do you like this dress? And I'd be like, I don't know. Do I? Do you like it? Is this something I should be, you tell me. And she was like, it was like dealing with a child. Like I was like, I probably sounded so stupid. I was like, I don't know. Is this good? What do you think? And she was like, yeah, it looks good. We're going to get it. And then she was like, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get this and you're going to wear this on this at this party for the wedding. I was like, okay. I mean, if you say so. That's kind of how I felt about the whole thing. Mm-hmm. If someone told me explicit instructions, I could follow them. But if you asked me to, like, create something or decide something, I just was a blank.
Here's an example of this is when I moved into this apartment in August, there's, like, street sweeping regulations. So I was parking on the street, but there are certain streets that I couldn't park on certain days of the week. And having to track in my head, first of all, what day of the week it was is already hard. And then also figuring out, okay, on this day of the week, I can park on the odd side of the street. Okay, so which side of the street is odd? It was like I was having to like collect so much information and then like coalesce it into a decision. And it was too much for me that I got 5 parking tickets in a row for $0. They were like morning tickets, but I got 5 parking tickets in a row because I couldn't process the information.
I think the best way to describe it is to imagine that you are, you know that white noise mute sound from TV when it makes that, it's loud and crackly? Imagine that so loud, turned up to 10, okay, 24 hours a day, and then somebody asks you, do you want a hamburger or do you want a chicken tender? And you're like looking, and you're like, it's so loud.
You're like, what did you say?
So yeah, it's like, what did you say? And they're both black. Like, it's imagine if 2 people gave you 2 nail polish colors. They're both green, and they're like, which green do you like? And it's so loud, and it's so fuzzy, and they look the exact same. You have no way to differentiate. You have to be like, this one is closer? That's kind of what it felt like for a really long time. Like, Agreed. A really, really long time.
Agreed. And I still get snippets of that now, but definitely way better, way better. And then, so like at this point, like 6 months out from the loss, I would say I was starting to feel joy again. Every once in a while, like some things would really bring me joy. And I also started to feel just kind of like neutral, like new normal around this time.
You know what's not in your day-to-day diary that you're keeping about every single aspect of your life?
What?
You didn't talk about me. You didn't mention me one time.
I don't think you're in my diary at all, actually. I'll be totally honest with you.
I don't even know what to make of that.
Oh, I did a Control F for Judith in my grief journal, and here's what I found. A list. Some things I want to start writing about at some point. One of them is my trip to New Hampshire with Judith.
I literally feel like a speck of dirt in your grief life. I am nothing.
But that's it. That's all you get. That's all you get.
It's such an honor to be. You don't remember what day we met. You don't remember our first conversation. You remember the first day that you smiled, but you don't remember our first anything?
Sorry. I think it's related because I think I healed a lot on our trip in end of July, early August. But the first time that I felt relaxed, do you remember this? I texted you. I was lying in my bed here at the new apartment. I had just moved in. And I thought to myself, I was like, I feel high. Like, did I like do a gummy or something and forget about it? But no, it was just that I felt happy and relaxed. And I had forgotten what that felt like to the point that I thought I had accidentally done drugs and forgotten about it.
You know, okay, can we go back to me for a minute?
Yeah.
Everything boils down to this. Perhaps you didn't need to write in your journal so much because you had me.
You were my journal.
We were doing it together. And so you didn't need to write because you could talk to me.
I love that. I think that's probably true.
Because I think you stopped writing in it right around the time when we met.
That is true.
We met in May.
Mm-hmm.
And you stopped writing end of April?
You're my journal.
You're my journal. That's cute, right?
Yeah. And so then I feel like this fall has been a lot of like integrating the loss into my life, but I do feel like integrating the loss and then a lot of like life things that have had to happen in order for me to move forward. So that's like filing for divorce, putting our house on the market, like a lot of like a lot of administrative tasks. And then I don't The last thing I'll say is I think at this point I certainly have more good days than bad. At a year out, I have far more neutral or good days than bad, like a lot more. But the one thing that I am nervous to even tell you, but 2 days ago, when I was really sad 2 days ago, I think that was the worst I've felt since like February.
To be expected.
Yeah. But that was really that day that I felt that really sad, like whatever that was, like the 10th or something. It was the day I left the house for the last time. And I don't know that necessarily is what triggered it. I think it's more the death anniversary approaching. But like it felt like I had like muscle memory of like, oh, that's right. This is what it felt like to cry for 6 straight hours. Like my whole body was like all clenched and my back hurt the next day in this one spot that I remembered my back hurting for like 2 full months in the beginning because I was constantly tensing. It was familiar and it did not feel good. But this time I knew it wasn't forever.
And we're better at it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think it is. It's not like the shitty days don't happen, or it's not like the grief isn't overwhelming at points. Like, I had a day a couple nights ago where I was sobbing on the patio, but I think we're much better at it. We're better at knowing what brings us comfort. We're better at, like, we know where to grieve. Like, we know where to go on the floor. It takes time to learn that the floor is something that's comforting. It takes time to know what songs are helpful, what songs are not. It takes time to learn these coping mechanisms. So it's just that you have more tools to deal with it, I think, than I did in the beginning. In the beginning, it felt like it was never going to end, and it felt like completely unfamiliar, and it just was real. I just had no idea what to do when it happened. Yeah. And so I think part of it is like the feeling itself, and then part of it is like you have no way to comfort yourself. Now, the feeling's still shitty. I still, it's really hard. But I think we now have a few more tools in our toolbox for how to deal with the really, really, really hard moments. You know what it reminds me of?
What?
It reminds me of like that story that people say about how, like, there's basically like when you lose a child, like you're at the bottom of a pit, and then people are at the top of the pit being like, oh, I see you're in pain. I want to help you. Let me send you food. And you're like, but I'm still at the bottom of the hole. And then they're like, oh, don't worry. Let me pray for you. And you're like, okay, but I'm still at the bottom of the hole. And then they're like,
you're so strong.
I'm going to wash your laundry. And you're like, okay, but I'm still stuck down here. And you are still up there. And I am still dying in a hole. And then apparently, well, this is how the story goes. Then like a lost mom comes and she gets in the hole with you. Mm-hmm. And she was like, and you're like, what are you doing down here? And then the lost mom says, oh, I've been here before. I know how to get out. Let me show you the way. And it's like, I think that's kind of what it is. It's like there's a path out, and I think it's one of those things that it's when you have experience or you're following someone who has experience, it's easier to get out than if you were your first time, if you had none of those things. Yeah. The reason why talking to people who had lost children was so helpful to me those first couple days is because I saw that they were human beings. Mm-hmm. And I asked her, I said, do you still think of your son the minute you wake up? And she's like, no. She's like, I have 3 living children. I have a job that keeps me busy. I have a husband who needs me. She's like, I think about my son every day, but it doesn't keep me up at night. And it's not the first thought when I wake up in the morning. Right. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, this person loves her baby as much as I do. This person lost her baby in the exact same way that I did. And she doesn't.
She's not debilitated by it.
It's not debilitating. She is okay.
Because it is debilitating in the beginning.
Because it is. And when I went to go visit her, her children were like very alive and screaming in the grocery market aisles, like screaming and like running in 2 different directions. And I said to her, I was like, your children are very alive. She's like, very alive. And seeing that was good for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so those were the things on your list.
Any other thoughts on a year of grief? You're not there yet, but.
I'm not there yet. But I've stopped keeping track of time. Like, actually, my sister texted me this morning, and she was like, we're thinking of Aiden today. I was like, why?
Because it's the 12th?
Yeah. To me, that is, like, so good.
Mm-hmm.
I am so happy that I didn't.
Yeah.
It used to be that every 4th of the month and every 12th of the month was like a nightmare. And the fact that the 12th of the month can just be a 12th of the month and not like anything.
Every once in a while, there'll be a day that I get a lot. I think actually December 18th was a day I woke up and I had a bunch of texts from people being like, thinking of you today, like thinking of you and Quinn. And I was literally like, why? And then I was like, oh, because it's the 18th. You know, like, and it's sweet. Like, I'm happy that people do that, but also it felt good to be like, why?
Yes. I think there are people who would feel like, I want to remember every day. I want to be in so much pain. I want it because it keeps me close. That is not my attitude. I certainly feel attached to his grave, and I'm sad that I'm leaving it. And like, I do feel afraid that I'm not going to hold him in my heart when he's physically not near me. I do have that fear. But like, I want to live. Mm-hmm. I want to be happy.
As long as we're living, Judith. As long as we're living, we want to have a good life.
Like, I want to live. I want to be happy. I want to go back. I want my life to be normal. I want to have friends. I don't want to be this debilitated all the time. Yeah. I don't want to feel like I've lost everything. Mm-hmm. I want to feel like I lost my son, but I didn't lose myself. I didn't lose my personality. I didn't lose. Like, I lost a lot of money, but whatever, money is money. But I want to feel like I lost my son and that I can still live a happy, fulfilled life without everything being gone. The problem is when you lose a child that you feel like you lost everything. Because you did for a while, but that's not my goal.
I agree.
So a year out,
you know, I'm sitting here almost a year out. I feel good right now. I have had some harder days this week, but I feel like I can see how far I've come in a year. And I know that this time last year, like if 11 months ago Alina could see me, she would be happy with where I'm at. She would be happy with my progress. She would think she'd be proud of me.
And how do you feel going into year 2?
I'm a little bit nervous about year 2. I am a little bit, I already can feel myself kind of having the first thought being like, Alina, why are you so XYZ? Like, it's been a long enough time that you shouldn't feel this way. And I do think that there's a certain, like, timeline that gets put on grief that after a year, you know, you sort of start to be normal again. And I don't really think that's applicable when you've lost a child. Or honestly, like, really with any grief. Like, grief doesn't have a timeline. But I can tell that in my own head, those kinds of thoughts are really going to have to, I'm going to have to work on actively containing those and not thinking those, because that is not helpful. And I don't believe it in my good moments, but in my bad moments, I'm judging myself for like still being at whatever point, you know. And after a year, I think that's only going to get worse.
One of the things that I'm really grateful for is that we have this podcast for just a space and time that's designated to explore our feelings and validate our experience. Mm-hmm. And I also think it's time that I set aside to just love my son purely.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So it's like good to know, like, okay, no matter what happens, I'm going to have this hour a week where I just love him so much. Mm-hmm. And that actually reminds me, just a message to our audience before we go. Alina and I have gotten some messages recently of people who shared that this podcast has been helping them. Mm-hmm. And it's been, I don't know, it really surprised me. I don't know why, but it surprised me that we've been able to help people. And I really feel so much like fulfillment and joy knowing that we can do that.
Yeah, I agree. It means a lot to know that our pain, you know, and the work that we're doing is not in vain or just for us. Like, it feels meaningful to have it be helping other people as well, and it's not just our self-absorbed ramblings, which sometimes it feels that way.
And I want to add that if you are our listener in Guam or India or Taiwan, we want to hear from you.
Or Australia.
Just shoot us a message and be like, I found you in Guam. How did you find us in Guam?
I do know our Great Britain, our listener over in Great Britain. Hi, Claire. But the other people in all the other countries.
Our listener in Taiwan, like, we're so happy to have you. We just want to know how you found us.
Did you get lost? And also, who are all the men who listen to us?
Yes. Who are the men? I think those are women on men's accounts. But not that I'm just saying that. But I want to show you what I got. This is unrelated to the podcast. But this was my big deal purchase yesterday.
Okay, I'm ready. Is it a baby girl swimsuit?
No, it's a baby girl mermaid dress.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It is so cute. You bought...
There's a brand called Rainbow Joe. By the way, I went in there and wanted to buy everything for myself because I was like, oh my God, it's all rainbows and colorful things and like fun patterns of dolphins and stuff. But then I resisted it because it was very expensive. But then I found this and it was, isn't this cute?
Baby girl's gonna look so cute in that.
In a little fishy dress.
She's gonna look, I cannot wait to see her in that.
I know. I feel like I don't believe she's going to fit in it. Like, I was at first looking at all the 3-month sizes because one thing I find myself doing is, like, only buying clothes up to 3 months. Mm-hmm. I cannot even register for something bigger than 3 months, you know? Mm-hmm. But the 3 months, but it's a tank top, and in 3 months, it might not be the right weather. Mm-hmm. So I had to push myself to buy something at a year.
I'm so proud of you. That's a big deal.
Alina.
Big deal.
A big deal. Okay, but it's cute. You like it?
It's so cute, and I want to show you what I painted this morning. Hold on.
Yeah. Let's see it. Oh, Alina, it's beautiful. Wow.
I was inspired by TikTok.
Are you going to hang that up somewhere?
Absolutely. Actually, this is relevant to our podcast. So what I just showed Judith is I painted like a rainbow rings. If you listened to last week's episode, you know what I'm talking about. If you follow us on Instagram, you know what I'm talking about. I'll repost the TikTok when this episode airs. But I think what I want to do, Judith, is I want to make one that's just the black hole. And then on the death anniversary, I want to paint one ring. And then next year on the death anniversary, I want to paint another ring. And just like for the rest of my life, paint one ring.
I want to challenge you to do something different.
Okay, I'm ready.
I think you should paint a black hole. Mm-hmm. And then any moment you feel like, I'm so glad I survived, this moment was worth it, you can paint a ring. And then you'll be able to look at those rings one day and be like, oh my God, look at these happy memories. Like, I really did have, like, why remember the anniversary of the death of it? You're going to remember that anyway. But, like, remember the really joyous moments that made it worth it.
I love that. I love that.
And knowing you actually will do it.
Yeah, I think I might do it.
All right, that's it for us. Bye, guys.
To all of our wonderful new friends, we want to hear from you. Email us at aslongasimlivingpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at aslongasimlivingpodcast. We'll get back to you as soon as our grieving brains allow. Yay!